In this video, we will review the necessary requirements for administering the Moxo test. It is important to follow these instructions in order to maintain the integrity of the test and its results. Let's start with the test environment. It is imperative that the test is performed in a quiet, secluded room. External distractions, such as phones or people's voices, should be avoided. The lighting and temperature in the room should be adjusted according to the patient's preference. The patient should feel refreshed and prepared to sit throughout the duration of the test. If the patient requires the use of any hearing or visual aids, please make sure they are being used. Be sure that the patient is seated on a stationary chair and that he or she maintains a comfortable distance from the screen. Once the test environment setup is complete, you can start running the test. Click the Run Test link on the screen. First, you will need to verify the system's functionality. To do so, you'll be asked to press the spacebar. If this instruction reappears or doesn't disappear, it means that the keyboard is not connected properly. Check the connection and try again. If the issue persists, replace the keyboard and try again. Next, you'll be asked to check the volume on the speakers. Turn on your computer's speakers. You should hear a monotonous tone. The volume should be high enough for the patient to hear, but not too loud or irritating. Once this is all set up, the tone will stop and the practice test instructions will appear on the screen. The next step is practice. The purpose of the practice is to familiarize the patient with the different test stimuli and ensure that the patient clearly understands the task. The instructions for the practice are identical to those used in the clinical test. As the examiner, you should introduce and explain the test's instructions. Remain seated next to the patient throughout the practice test. After you give the instructions, use the mouse to click on the Start Practice button. During the practice test, please pay attention to the following. The patient should only be pressing on the correct key. The patient's hand should remain near the keyboard at all times. They should not be withdrawn back toward the body after each key press. The patient should be pressing the spacebar only in response to a target image, not to a non-target image. Lastly, make sure that the patient presses the key only once per target image. You may offer positive feedback when the patient is pressing the key correctly, and draw his/her attention to mistakes as well. Once the practice is over, an opening screen for the clinical test will appear. If the patient did not perform the practice well, it is possible to redo it by clicking on Try Again. Once the instructions are clear, the patient may continue on to the clinical test. Let the patient know that you are about to start the complete test. Inform the patient of the test's length of time, according to the relevant version. Remind the patient to respond correctly throughout the test. Let the patient know that you will remain in the room, but it is best to avoid talking throughout the test. Make sure to answer any questions he/she may have before starting the test. When the patient is ready, click the Start Test button. A countdown will appear, after which the test will begin. During the test, it is recommended that you avoid any distractions that might interfere with the patient's concentration. It is recommended that you sit behind the patient. Also, make sure no one enters or leaves the room during the test. It is also recommended that no one else should be present in the room, other than yourself, the examiner. If the presence of an additional person is required, such as when young children are involved, the person should be seated quietly at the opposite end of the room. Avoid talking during the test. If the patient asks a question, provide an answer, then redirect his/her attention back to the test. Observe the patient's behavior during the test. Note any relevant behavior that may be important for later assessment. Try not to provide any kind of feedback during the test. If the patient begins to show signs of extreme impatience, such as staring into space, talking continuously, or asking how much time remains, prompt him/her to complete the test. Remember that encouragement should focus on helping the patient finish the test, not on improving performance. When the test is finished, you will be notified that it has been successfully completed.